whoever planned this program really thought about it quite a lot, because our next speaker goes a nice, neat segue from this kind of peaceful, calm, connected, straight over into something that's very related to being peaceful and calm and connected, and that's happiness. And our next speaker to join us today is Mr. Stephen Dargan, who helps leaders create organizations that light people up. He likes the idea of doing good work and then going home. And so he's very interested in how the world of work will be transformed for the better from everything that has happened to us over the last 20 months. Probably something that a lot of us are wondering and thinking and worrying about right now. So today he's going to take us along on a journey to see how happiness at work can be achieved. So welcome to Base, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much, David. Thanks, Lana, for inviting me, and delighted to be here. And Liliana, thank you so much for all that beautiful breath work that you just did as well. I love the breath work stuff. I've done lots of that, actually, with Liliana, and we do have a podcast, Liliana, together as well, where we share all this stuff. Anyway, delighted to be here today. I do have the ability to be able to share from the bottom of my screen, is it? I think I have that. Do I?
You should be able to.
Yeah, I should be able to do that. Yeah, if I want to share slides to talk about this. Great. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm Stephen, and I'm really interested in how we can create a world of work where people feel happier. And I suppose where that came from for me, and I suppose trying to go down the road of where sort of workplace happiness started for me, or where it ended, or where it didn't happen. I suppose what actually happened for me first, it came in a couple of numbers or a couple of conversations or stark situations for me. But first of all, when I worked in management for a manufacturing company a number of years ago, I had a team of 50 people that worked for me, and I worked for a very old organization. And this very old organization that I worked for didn't seem to like a lot of change in life. And I had just read a book from this guy that had just blown sort of my concept of what management must be like beforehand. And it was a book by a guy called Ricardo Semler. Some of you may have read it, and it's a brilliant book called Maverick. And Ricardo had taken over his organization from his father at the age of 21. There was 100 employees in the organization at the time. And what he wanted to do was to be able to transform, just change everything that his father had done with the organization and to build something completely different. So I also worked for a manufacturing organization at the time, but when I had read Ricardo's book and seen what he had done to Semco in Sao Paulo in Brazil, I was blown away. One of the first things he did was he got rid of the clocking system that was in the workspace. So we got rid of that, and I thought that that's what we do every day to monitor people coming in and out of our organization. How can you get rid of a clocking system? How can you not monitor people all the time? That was in my mindset at the time. That's what we needed to be able to do to create good workplaces. And the other thing that he did when he got rid of that system was then he created autonomous teams where he allowed the teams within the organizations to make decisions for themselves, decisions that worked best for themselves. So the teams themselves could make a decision when they wanted to come in to the factory to do their best work, when worked at best, right, maybe based around the traffic that was going on in Sao Paulo at the time. Maybe they came in earlier, they came in later, but all they had was a specific amount of work to do during the week. And once they got that done, they could work that any way they wanted and they could go home, which is a complete anathema to everything that I had done in the world of work, where everything was structured, that you came in at 8 o'clock in the morning, you did your work and you couldn't leave till you were finished at 4, no matter how much work you had done. And it was the other things that he'd done to create sort of autonomy within inside of the workplace. Would be things like when they wanted to move to a bigger premises, he simply took all his staff and he put them onto 3 buses and he drove them around Sao Paulo and he said, these are the 4 sites that we could possibly choose from. Choose which one do you think works best. And they looked at all the various different sites and they saw where some of the bus routes might have been and where, you know, most of the workers lived nearby, and the workers themselves got to choose where they worked. And that was the first time I saw democracy at work. And I went back to where I worked after reading this, because I was studying management at the time, and I tried to implement some of this into the working space where I worked. And I found I was getting a lot of pushback on it. So I found that maybe with inside of the working space, I wasn't being as making as many inroads as I wanted to with inside of that space. That was coupled with a couple of other things. So one day I was on holiday, or one year I was on holiday with my little 12-year-old daughter. And we went to Italy. We were in this beautiful place in Italy, in Tuscany, called Lucca. It's a beautiful walled city. And when we were in Lucca, we rented out some bicycles and we were cycling around the walls of the city and we had a wonderful time. It just felt magical. And at the very end of it, we sat down for a cup of coffee afterwards. And as we sat down for a cup of coffee, my daughter said to me, said, "Dad, this is the most wonderful holiday I've ever been on. This is fantastic. I never want it to end." Oh, I said, "That's wonderful. But the bad news is we're going home in 3 days." And she said, "Well, why are we going home in 3 days?" And I said, "Because I only ever get 2 weeks holidays off every summer. Because I work for a manufacturing team, it's the exact same 2 weeks every summer. It can never be in September. It can never be in June. And it's only for 2 weeks. And I can never have 3 weeks, and I can never have 5 weeks. That's just the way it is." And she just looked at me and she said, "Dad, that doesn't seem fair." And that sort of resonated and stuck with me. And I went, "You're right, it doesn't seem fair. Is this it for the rest of my working life, that I've got 2 weeks vacation off every summer and that's it forever?" So that sort of stuck in my mind. So then I came home from the holiday with that lingering in my mind. And then one day I realized to travel to work, well, I didn't just realize then, but I knew that for me to travel to work was a 50-mile journey to work and a 50-mile journey home. So it was roughly about an hour and a half, roughly about 3 hours a day I was sitting in my car driving to work. So I worked out the mathematics, and I sat down one evening and I worked out for every year that I worked for the organization I worked for, I was spending 12 and a half days of my life multiplied by 24 hours sitting in my car. And that resonated with inside of me, and I said, that feels really stark. 12 and a half days, the equivalent pretty much of my whole vacation for the summer, has been negated by the fact that I sat in the car for 12 and a half days to get my vacation in the first place. And then I worked out the mathematics again on that, and it looked quite stark, and I realized that by the time I retired, by the time I had gone into retirement, I would have spent exactly 364 days of my life sitting in my car driving to work. And it would have been the equivalent of me turning up to work just due to retire the year later to say to my employers that, "Listen, it took me a year to get here. Is there any chance you can let me off a year early?" And the starkness of those thoughts and those things that came to me made me realize that what actually happens to us, and Tal Alban Ben Al Shahar, I can never get his name right, and he's a brilliant psychologist and works in the field of happiness, talks about this. So much of us have a thing in our life where we have, certainly in the rat race archetype, which is what most of us get caught up in, is where we're in the rat race of driving to work, commuting to work all the time, doing work, and then coming home and getting lost in that. We're in a state where it's called present detriment. So we're putting off joy in life at this moment in time because there's going to be a future benefit, and the future benefit usually happens to us when we retire. So we'll put up with the long commute, we'll put up with the difficult work, but the future benefit is when we retire. Where that became stark for me is because I had a team of 50 people who worked for me. A lot of the guys who worked for me in my organization would talk about retirement. They talk about all the things they were going to do with their wife, all the joy that they were going to have together, and all the places that they were going to travel to. And nearly to a man, every single one of the guys who retired early in my organization for my team, I would get a phone call 6 months to a year later to say that David or Sean had passed away, had a heart attack, or had a stroke. So the future benefit that they expected to get later in life never happened. So now we live in this world of what we call present detriment. So we're putting off joy in life. So when I decided to leave the world of work, I decided that I wanted to help people create more present benefit in the world of work. So that's what I decided I wanted to do. Let me go back a little bit further just to explain this. I'm going to share my screen. If in about 2014, on the 4th of January, you were living in London and you were traveling to work, and with the fog of Christmas all behind you, thinking about all the stuff that you did for Christmas, and the tiredness that you might have felt from that, but the coldness of London weather, and realizing you're going back into the working space, there were hundreds of workers, or thousands of workers, were actually sitting on tubes, and they were sitting on tubes right across London. Let me share my screen with you now here. And as they were sitting on these tubes going across London, when you're sitting on a tube, you may see just above the tube there's little advertisement hoarding that might tell you, about holidays, or tell you about travel companies or insurance companies. And when these people looked up from their seat where they were sitting, they saw where the advertisements usually were these quotes. It's as if somebody were there making up pointless jobs just for the sake of keeping us all working. Or how can one even begin to speak of dignity in labour when one secretly feels that one's job shouldn't even exist? And these were quotes from a guy called David Graeber, who's an anthropologist from the London School of Economics, who'd written an article for Strike magazine 6 months previously. And he had talked about the fact that we lived in this world where John Maynard Keynes in the 1930s had talked about the possibility that by 2030, which is only 9 years away, that we would all be working 15 hours a week. We are no closer to that 15 hours a week. We're probably further away from that 15 hours a week. And developments in management and developments in technology and autonomy and automation and all those different types of things should have got us closer to those 15 hours, but we feel no closer to those 15 hours. And what we've done is actually we fill that void with lots of jobs that feel absolutely pointless, that make a lot of us feel empty inside and don't feel that they're absolutely needed. And David wrote an article about this. And when he wrote this article, he got hundreds of people wrote emails in and said, you've just described the way I feel about my world of work. I feel it's pointless and it's empty, and I'm only there because a manager wanted me there because it makes him feel powerful. And I'm making up time in my day from doing my work. And then David created this book, which is, hang on there a second. Yeah, which is this book, which is Bullshit Jobs: A Theory, which is an excellent book if anybody wants to look at the world of work and question why they might be working. And it's just a really interesting concept. Sadly, David passed away last year, he did. But this book is one excellent book on the way he sees the world of work. And so many of us have to question, what do we really want to get out of the world of work? And I think more than ever, over the past 20 months, we've begun to realize that the world of work needs to change. And what we have entered into is what we've all probably heard, is called the Great Resignation. And because in the last 20 months, we begin to realign and reassert what we really want from our experienced life. Do we really want to experience present detriment still? Do we want to feel, present benefit? Do we really want to feel a benefit now? And the truth is we do. We've seen for the last 20 months, nobody gave us a manual on how to work from home. Nobody gave us a manual how to work remotely, and yet we all managed to be able to do this and do it quite well. And what we've discovered now is that there are huge swathes of people who've decided that they no longer want to work for the organizations that they work for, because the organizations may be doing a number of things, whether it's treating their workers unfairly, paying the workers badly, poor working conditions, are not allowing them the freedom to be the person that they could be and apply the strengths that they could have into the world of work. And that's why at this moment in time, we discovered from Microsoft research that 41% of employees plan to quit work within the next 12 months, which is quite stark in many ways. 46% say they want to move because they want to be able to work remotely. And what we've discovered in figure is this is even higher. This is in the US, 20 million workers have resigned since April just gone. And they decided that they want to no longer work for organizations that don't feel the needs or don't feed their needs, give them a sense of purpose, apply to their strengths, or care for them as human beings. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a second. And another reason why this became quite stark for a lot of us is that we only live for on average 4,000 weeks. And I don't know about you, but I've passed the halfway mark on this one. And when I saw this statement only a few months ago, I began to realize that what I want out of life is different for the next 2,000 weeks of my life. And I think a lot of us are beginning to realize that what we want from not just the world of work, but from our work outside of work, or from our life outside of work, we want something different from this. So this 4,000, what do we want to do with the rest of the 4,000 weeks or so that we have left? Well, the rest of the 2,000 weeks or so that we have left. Okay. So the genie is out of the bottle. We know that we can work remotely, and we're not going back into work for organizations that don't treat us well. So if organizations have low pay, poor working conditions, they're constantly monitoring us, and there is organizations out there that are putting software onto people's computers, checking and monitoring throughout the world of work. Our organizations don't have that don't have that sense of purpose or meaning. We no longer want to work for it. So we're making decisions. So why I'm saying that workplace happiness is important at this moment in time is because If you don't create a world of work where people want to work for your organization, people are going to leave and they're going to make decisions to work somewhere else. And that's why workplace happiness is more important now than ever. Okay, let me ask you a question. Let's do some questions. 1 second. How do you want the way of work to be different from now on? And what are the key things you need? So I want you to think about the future of work, okay? How do you want the way that you work from now on to be different from now on? And what are the key things you need? I want you to keep that thought, because what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. Let's do this. Let's have a bit of fun together. So how do you want the way of work to be different from now on? And what are the key things you need? I'm going to give you 3 minutes in breakout rooms. Let's see, there's probably 1 million people here, is there? Yeah. Let's recreate. Oh, cool. We have rooms made up as well. When we recreate them, let's do that, yeah. Let's recreate, let's make even more rooms. Cool, this is great. Brilliant. Okay, let's do this and get people to have a chat within the rooms, okay? So what do you want the future of world to work, or the future of work to be able to look like? And what will you need to get there? Okay, see you in 3 minutes. Have people been going into rooms? I think everybody's been beginning to pop into rooms. That's great.
I haven't seen my room though, but probably because I'm the host, the main host.
And Ansel hasn't gone into a room either.
Anel probably she'll not gonna go, but I'm gonna join. I think I'm gonna join.
Here, I can put you into one.
Room 5, because I see there are just 2 people present there. So let me.
Is there? Okay. Where are you again now? Let's see where I could.
I can join if you can't see me.
Yes, you join in there. Thank you very much.
No worries. Great session so far. So wait, I'm lost.
Thank you very
much. Room. I'm gonna do room 8, room 5. I'm joining now.
Brilliant.
Pushing for these changes, martyr, the word martyr comes to mind. And yourself?
Well, I have 2 different lives. So one life I spend in an office, but only 1 day a week. And then the other 6 days, I'm free to do, whatever I see fit. And that has also a double-edged sword to it, because sometimes if it's sunny out, I don't do anything except go out and play. But then I don't make any money, but I do have fun. And then some days I have to work when it's sunny out because I need to make money sometimes. So I don't have it quite as bad as the bullshit jobs people, but I did for 25 years. That's what prompted me to change on December 10th of 1997 at 7 a.m. So I know exactly when I left the corporate world. I left Wall Street. But so I would be one of the lucky ones who only spends 1 day a week in an office. And I do have a flexible schedule there too. And I'm in a position where I don't have to, take too much shit. But I also do get phone calls the other 6 days for that job. So I'm on call. So I could be interrupted at any time, but by no means am I complaining about that situation. So I did make some changes. I'm going to be 60. So I already experienced some of the, the things that Stefan was talking about. And there was no way I was ever going back to do that. So tell me in the last 50 seconds, these client assignments are still feeling like the corporate world a bit?
You're muted, Gillian.
Just smaller organizations have different problems.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're kind of related. Yeah, different orders of magnitude. Yeah. Yeah, I work in the software space, so I could happily not deal with any people if needs be,
Yeah.
be an automaton,
That might be
receive my assignment.
a possibility. Yeah.
But
Recording in progress.
Great to see you guys. How did you all get on? Good? Probably never had enough time, but we only have 3 minutes, and trying to explain workplace happiness in half an hour is a difficult thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. Do you want to stick in the chat down there anything that came up for you guys? If you want to stick anything in the chat regarding that, how do you want the way of work to be different from now on, and what are the key things that you need? Stick it in the chat down below, and we get an idea of what you guys think. It'd be good to be able to see that too as well. Excellent. So share it with us. Brilliant. And I'm just going to ask one person, actually. I'm going to ask Michelle Baird from The Hague. How are you, Michelle?
Hi there, Stephen.
Great. Good to hear from you. And
yeah.
you? How do you want the world of work to change from now on?
Yeah, I was just telling Lana and them in our session very fast, making a difference. So doing work that is of meaning. I left the corporate world for that matter, for that reason. And what I'm learning today in your chat, but also from Veronica earlier, how would I do that would be to find people, clients, but also just business colleagues that have the same values, that we're working together to build the same thing, community, right? And yeah, and that really inspires me, actually, because that's the direction that I want to go in. So I think if you're working with people that are like-minded like that, then you'll get there.
Oh, I like that. Thanks so much for sharing, Michelle. Pleasure to have you on board. Brilliant. So pretty much what have we done? We've spent the last 20 months pretty much navigating a pandemic, trying to keep our families and ourselves safe, and we're trying to do a little bit of work in between too, isn't it? And that's what we and all of your employees have been trying to do at the same time. And we need to, one of the things, so when I'm going to talk about the things that actually, I'm just going to talk, because we've only got a certain amount of time, talk about some of the key things that will improve employee happiness within the working space. So thank you. Keep sharing what you guys are doing, but let me share with you what. Yeah. So what present benefit or works looks like for a lot of us. It's believing the best in people. It's creating trust. And the best organizations have got leaders that are allowing that vulnerability to happen, and trust happens within the workspace. If you're an organization that has decided that you want to monitor how your employees are working remotely, we live in a transparent world. And the Generation Zs, which are the younger generation that are coming into the world of work, they are not willing to accept that this is going to happen for work. They're not going to accept some of the things that we might have said that would work. Actually, I think my chat probably has come up there. Has it on the screen? Sorry, I'll just take it off there for a second. So there you go. There you go. And they're not going to accept the world of work that doesn't allow trust with employees. And as humans, when we create trust, we create vulnerability. Vulnerability creates trust within organizations, and understand that we've just tried our best to try and get through the last 20 months. Everybody is just simply doing their best. Good leaders recognize that. Secondly, people should feel they belong. This is a human trait, and if you've read Humankind, the brilliant book that the Dutch historian, what's his name again? I've just lost the name of the Lana, you know the name, is it? Rutger Bregman. Yeah, and the importance of this sense of belonging, and he's shown through history where the importance of belonging really, really mattered. Your organization, people should feel they belong. And if you haven't sat down with the people in your organization and had one-to-ones with them over the last period of time, and I have met people who worked in organizations who have had not one conversation over the last 20 months with a leader in their organization, simply asking them how they feel. How are they feeling? What's going on for them? And the best organizations in the world are the ones that are creating what we call psychological safety. The ability for the organization, the people within it, to be able to speak up and say, I don't know if I quite agree with that. Or my voice matters and I need to be spoken. I need to be able to speak. And it's to create an organization where there is no repercussions where what people say within organizations. So everybody has a voice. Introverts and extroverts. And the introverts have probably loved remote working for the last 20 months or so, and the extroverts have been dying to get back into the workspace. So it's about understanding what the two different teams of people might like within the workspace. So creating a place where people feel they have a sense of where they belong. Google did a great study on this about how to create psychological safety, because they've looked at how to create the greatest teams. I know Amy Edmondson has been doing a lot of work with this since 1999 on psychological safety, so that's a really good way to be able to go down and have a look at this. But Google had a project called Project Aristotle, where they looked at what created the best teams, and they discovered that psychological safety was the most important thing to creating great teams at work. The other thing that's important to encourage creativity and help the workplace is celebrate mistakes. Screwing up sometimes is absolutely all right, and we probably have done that. And Ben & Jerry's are really good at doing this, because Ben & Jerry's also have what we call a flavor graveyard. So if you went to Vermont, where they have their factory, they actually have a graveyard where they have a flavor graveyard where all the flavors that never made it get. There is an actual ceremony where they actually bring out the ice cream and they actually put it into the ground, and people stand around it and they mourn the loss of that ice cream. And I think more organizations need to be doing stuff like this, like celebrating mistakes. Tom Nixon is talking later today. He is at the conference. Tom Nixon's organization, Nixon McInnes, used to do this every month. They used to call it the Church of Fail, where they would all go and they would stand in the Church of Fail, and they would all admit, CEOs and all, of all the things that they failed or mistakes that they made during this month. This also creates vulnerability, and vulnerability in organizations creates trust. Here's a question though, just going to come out of this for a second. Talking about mistakes, okay? What flavor, there is a question, there is a particular type of nut that Ben & Jerry's have tried over the last 20 years to introduce to their ice cream, and they have failed every time they've introduced this nut to their ice cream. Can anybody tell me what they think that nut might be? Stick it in the chat. Let's find out. What nut do you think that Ben & Jerry's have struggled? They've tried it 3 times and it hasn't worked. What nut? No, it's not walnut. It's not pistachio. It's not pineapple. Pineapple is not. Is that a nut? No. Brazil nut? No. Macadamia? No. Oh, great to see, Douglas. Brilliant. Your beloved Vermont. Pine nut? No. Caramel? No. It's a hazelnut. Andrea, you're the winner. And if we had a prize of ice cream, it would go your way, but it'd probably get melted before it got there. So we'll hold off on that. But it is. They've tried 3 times to actually put hazelnut into their ice cream, and it's failed every single time. And I have no idea why, because I love hazelnut ice cream, hazelnut chocolate ice cream. But there you go. That's Ben & Jerry's for you. So celebrate mistakes in your organization. Create that sense of trust through vulnerability by allowing people to recognize if we make mistakes, the magic begins to happen in those situations. Getting back to my slides. Happy days. We talked about this. We talked about the importance of community, and community is going to be strength through all of this. And we've realized how the importance of community and people around us and supports more than ever in the last 20 months. So great organizations allow people to play to their strengths. I don't know about you guys, but over here in Ireland, the education system is a little bit broken. So what happens to us is that when you get to your last 2 years of school, you have to pick about 7 or 8 subjects to do your final exams. And when I ask students about this, well, I know this because I've been through this experience myself. Out of those 7 subjects that you do, how many of those subjects do you really enjoy doing? And for most of us, it's roughly about 3. Maybe 2, possibly 3. So we're doing 4 subjects that we don't really care for. And what do? Well, we spend our time getting tutoring to get better at those subjects, and we spend less time doing the subjects we really enjoy. And the same thing is happening in our workspaces. We're slotting people into roles that are not suiting their strengths. They're not applying to their strengths. And this is one of the things that I do with organizations is I find everybody within the organization what their strengths are and how we can slot them into roles that make them feel empowered every day, that they feel that they're being their best each day. And this is really important. And community is very important. And being part of something bigger is really important. This organization in the UK are brilliant at being able to do this. This is John Lewis and Partners, and they've been going since the early part of the 20th century. And that's John Speeden Lewis, who took over that organization from his father in the early, I think it was about 1960, just after 1916, he began to take over his father. And one of the interesting things in this organization is they discovered this, was him, his father, and his brother, when they sat down and worked out their salaries, they discovered that the salaries of the three of them back in 1916 was greater than the other 300 employees in the organization. And this guy, John Speeden Lewis, said, this no longer should matter. This should not happen. So they decided that everybody in the organization was going to become a partner, and everybody was going to be cared for within the organization. So to this day, John Lewis still does this. There are 90,000 people now work for this organization in the UK. They're John Lewis and they're the Waitrose organization. And within this organization, you are cared for as a human being. Everybody gets the same benefits for salary bonus announced every year. They got flexible working hours, which was before this pandemic even happened, accommodated everybody, including childcare vouchers, carers leave for those taking care of parents. They were a company that were ahead of their time. They have all these societies and clubs for workers to take part in. And they've also got 5 subsidized estates, huge estates, one of them in Hertfordshire, I think, with about 1,000 acres of land that they have, where all of their employees can come and visit for subsidized prices, all through their working experience and into their pensionable life too as well. And that's including 5 yachts, which is pretty cool. And if you work for that organization after 25 years, they're going to give you 6 months of a paid sabbatical to leave the organization and go and do something and travel around the world and see something you've never seen before. These are the organizations of the future. Even though this is an organization that is over 100 years old, these guys were thinking ahead of their time. And other organizations that are thinking forward are the likes of the Patagonias, because we talked about what we want to be able to give to the world, what we want to be able to contribute to the world. And this company thinks about what we take from the world. And they've realized that if you do not need their clothing, if you do not need a jacket, don't buy it. And this is a 2011 ad that they had in their organization, said, don't buy this jacket. If you've got a perfectly good jacket, you don't need to buy one, because we are not a company based on taking resources out of the ground. We are an organization based around caring for the environment, because we build clothing for the environment. And they're an organization that inherently think of their employees. They've got childcare on site for all their employees, and their leader, the CEO, Yvon Chouinard, wrote that book, Let My People Go Surfing. And why has he got that book written, Let My People Go Surfing? Because if you went into their Ventura head office, the first thing you would see when you came into the reception area is a guy with lots of long hair. He's actually a surfer. And the first thing he'll point you towards is the surf report, which is just beside the reception area. And all the employees get an update on the surf report. And if the surf is good, all the employees can make a decision to go out and get some really good surf in on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, but they'll repay in many ways when it comes to work. And they're also an organization that donated a lot of their money to environmental groups as well. So when we talk about community, it is also the organizations that we create and what they're giving back to us, as an environment, as a community, as a country, not only to their people. There's a wider sphere there. Fifthly, as well, we need to be aware of this, the whole idea of forced fun. There is nothing worse than forced fun, or a forced fun day. Do not be tricked into thinking that if your workplace has just bought a load of foosball tables, bean bags, free fruit, and a bit of ping pong, that things are going to change for the better. They are nice add-ons, they are nice to haves, but they are not workplace happiness. Workplace happiness is caring for people, allowing people autonomy, playing to their strengths, and checking in with them as human beings. These are lovely add-ons. Goldman Sachs, over the course of the last 20 months, had a letter from 13 of their employees complaining about the fact they were working 95 hours a week. Goldman Sachs' response at that time was to give some free fruit hampers to the guys and tell them there was yoga lessons on at 12:30 every day. The guys responded in saying, we don't even have time to eat food, let alone sit through a yoga session at 12:30 because you make us work too hard. As an organization, you need to be aware of this. And also, more than ever, we need to have an honest conversation with ourselves. We need to say no to bastards. And I mean this. This is one of PropellerNet, a company that's based in Brighton, and this is one of their core values. Too often we take on clients for our organization that treat our employees in a way that we wouldn't treat anybody else, where they're hard work, they take up a lot of our time, they take too much effort. let's just say no to the people that are causing this. Let's say no to the difficulties that we experience through this. And this, more than ever, I think, over the next period of time that we work, we no longer want to work in a world where we're dealing with difficult clients or difficult people all the time. And one organization that seems to do that very well is your brilliant Dutch organization, Tony's Chocolonely, which are absolutely fantastic at being able to do this, because they're an organization that decided, when the organization was first formed all those years ago, well, it wasn't formed, it was Tune, I think, had gone off and written some articles. He was a journalist, had written articles about chocolate, and he discovered that there was a lot of slavery in chocolate and there was a lot of child labor in chocolate, and he decided that that no longer should be the way it is, and he wanted to be able to change that. So instead of doing that by writing articles, he developed an organization, and that's the brilliant organization, Tony's Chocolonely. We had Enzo Van Santen, the Choco Evangelist from that organization, talk at my conference last year. And the wonderful thing they do is not just they're creating 100% slave-free chocolate, but they're also, look at this. This is called the ticket of trust. See the Tony's Chocolonely thing? That's the employment agreement that they give to all workers. It is 1 page long. That is all it is. They trust their workers implicitly. It is not a 700-page document or a 56-page document. It is a 1-page document that looks exactly like that. That's the employment agreement that they have.
Even if I can interrupt you there, because we are actually out of time and you're making us all hungry talking about chocolate. Can you give us a closing 30-seconder about workplace happiness before we all take off for lunch?
I will. So, and I apologize completely because I'm completely forgetting that I'm on the other side of the world here. I'm just going to come out of this here. Then I'm not on the other side of the world, but I'm an hour behind you guys, and I wasn't even thinking of lunch as well. Workplace happiness now more than ever is the way we decide what the world of work is going to be. Now we want to work remotely. Now we want flexibility. Now we want a manager and leaders within organizations that treat us as human beings and care for us as human beings. Now more than ever we want autonomy. Now more than ever we want a workplace that gives us a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning and is willing to communicate that with us. Now more than ever, we need workplace happiness. I want to say thank you so much for all of you guys for sitting through the last half hour with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and thanks, David.